I want to say thank you to the folks who are hosting us today, and thank you to all of you who came out today to share your thoughts and hear our opinions and have us listen to your opinions on particular issues. I'm Wendy McNamara. I represent House District 76, which is now about 3/4 of Posey County, the west side of Evansville, and the new area or new territory is around North Park. And I'm just happy to be back here to serve my constituents and serve my community, and look forward to the next 2 years ahead. My focus will remain on trying to find ways to bring jobs to Indiana and make us flourish down here, and continue to try to remind Indianapolis that we do exist down here. Some of the things that I've been working on for this upcoming session, last time I introduced a military tax pension exemption. We'll do that again and make some changes to it and hope that we get a hearing on that. But what we're seeing in Indiana is a lot of military will return to Indiana as veterans and will leave to go to states that don't tax their pensions. And we would like to keep those folks here in Indiana. So my intention is to try to either phase out or do something with that veterans pension tax there. Another one that I was asked to introduce is something called the Blue Alert Bill. And it works a lot like the Amber Alert system, but it's for law enforcement. And I'm going to include fire in there as well. And if a police officer is injured or killed, and the offender has gotten away, a blue alert will go out, much like an Amber Alert, identifying and hopefully aiding in the apprehension of the person who's been accused of committing the crime. So that's a piece of legislation that will be coming through as well. And then I have another one on youth sentencing. We're still trying to get those youth who are sentenced as adults the education that they need while they're in prison. These would be not your juvenile offenders who just spend a couple years in YCC or something like that. These are youthful offenders who are sentenced as adults, and currently the education standards for those type of youth are not the same as your typical juvenile offender. So I'll be working on that. I am once again going to be the vice chair of Courts and Criminal Code. Happy to reprise that role, and that's a very interesting committee, and a lot of important things come through that committee.
And that's about time.
You serious?
I am.
Thank you for coming today.
They don't start the clock.
I think you started mine.
Good morning. I'm Suzanne Crouch. I represent District 78. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you for attending and your interest and your input. I apologize. I'm going to have to leave early to attend a memorial service. There are some huge challenges facing our country and facing our nation. And it's so interesting to me because two of the ones that are facing us are so intricately entwined, and that being education, and economic development. I normally don't like to share a bunch of numbers and statistics, but there are some very sobering numbers out there that I would like to take the opportunity to share with you. Nearly a third of Indiana's workforce is not trained or ready to work and have the proper skills to do so. And we all know highly educated workforce is important in attracting high-paying jobs. 32.2% of working Hoosiers have an associate's degree or higher, 32.2 of Hoosiers. In Vanderbilt County, it's 32.9. And we also have, in Indiana, been rated C- on our ability to produce good workers. That is so closely tied to education and what we do and how we prepare our children for the workforce. We need to continue to fund and maintain funding and increase funding for K through 12 and for higher education and for kindergarten, but we also need to address preschool education funding. Indiana is one of 11 states that does not fund preschool education. And it's pretty sobering because children in poverty are the ones that are least prepared to enter into kindergarten and into school. And 21.6% of Hoosier children live in poverty. 21.6%. Children from a higher socioeconomic background have a better vocabulary and are better prepared for school than those that are in poverty. And studies have proven that over and over again. Department of Correction, the rate of recidivism decreases with a lack of education and a lack of job training. And so we have some real challenges ahead of us, not only as a nation and as a country, but as a state in this upcoming session. And I look for your input, and it's going to take all of us working together to be able to solve these issues and these challenges that face us. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you all. Well, we'll get started with your questions now, and the first one is from Shane Martin about marijuana decriminalization. And you can step up to the mic and ask your question.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Okay. As most of you probably know, a bill was introduced last session to decriminalize less than 3 ounces of marijuana. And again, it's going to be introduced this session by Senator Tallien, I believe. And I think this is a great idea. Frankly, I think long overdue. 15 states have already decriminalized small amounts of marijuana, one of them being our neighbor, Ohio. I was, even though the bill did not come to a full vote, there was a fiscal impact statement conducted on this bill. It actually showed that the state would save, I should say the Department of Corrections would save 250 beds a year if we were to decriminalize small amounts of marijuana. Now, if you do the math, that's a little over $5 million a year. Obviously, in the grand scheme of things, $5 million is not a lot of money, but as Senator Becker indicated, the surplus is quickly dwindling, and I could think of better uses for $5 million. So I guess what I'm wondering is what your opinions are on, obviously a specific bill hasn't been introduced yet, but I'm interested to know your opinions on decriminalizing possession of marijuana.
Thank you. And do we have a very brief opposing viewpoint?
God, everybody thinks it ought to be decriminalized.
All right, hearing none. We'll. Okay.
I'm Margie Toms, and I think that it would be ridiculous to legalize marijuana. If are they going to be able to smoke it in their cars and throw out the whatever the roach, and then a 9-year-old pick it up? Are we going to have people smoking the marijuana now? In our day, this is so much more potent than in the 60s. I never smoked marijuana, but I don't want people that are smoking marijuana on our roads driving. I've talked to people that have been on marijuana. They said that everything seems like it's in slow motion. We criminalize smoking, which is illegal, and now we're trying to get money off of an illegal product and make it legal because for money. Most of them raise their own, and so how are we going to make money off of that?
Thank you. Who wants to pick up with this?
Is it decriminalization or is it legalization?
I will. I'll be brave. I just want to clarify. You're just talking about the decriminalization where it's a no sentence or a lesser sentence for the possession. Right. Correct? Okay. Right. All right. Not legalizing marijuana. Yeah. Okay. That's what I'm trying to clarify. And those are two different topics. So I wanted to make sure I was on the right topic with you. And yes, it would make a big difference in the overcrowding of our prisons. If you look at Indiana compared to any of our neighbors as far as our standards for sentencing, we are probably one of the harshest, or we are one of the harshest in the Midwest, and it keeps us at a envy, I guess, of our neighbors. One of the concerns that has been brought up about the decriminalization of it is if we do that, does that mean more people from Ohio will come over here? Does that mean more people from Kentucky or Illinois? Because we've relaxed a little bit in what we're doing. So that will remain an argument, I think, as we look forward, people who are concerned about its impact on our prisons in other ways. If you look at the cost benefit of it, definitely is a cost benefit to the Department of Corrections. It's a cost benefit when you look in the prosecution of it and having to spend the time, prosecuting for somebody for possession of less than 3 grams. There are other issues out there, not just marijuana, but other issues as far as the sentencing goes in Indiana. There's going to be a lot of tough questions, a lot of tough swallowing for legislators to get down to the point of, are we willing to raise taxes and spend more money in prisons? Are we willing to look at, decriminalization in some periods? There's going to be a lot of discussion on that. I would suspect probably somebody will bring it back. You're looking like you're getting ready to cut me off again, huh? Okay. I saw him going for it. But, this is one of those issues that's going to have a lot of discussion back and forth again, but you have to be able to weigh the costs and benefits and look at the impact, big picture, on Indiana and what's going to happen.
Sure. Shane, thanks for your question. Yeah, there's a cost. I know that Indiana is probably the largest or the most restrictive state in laws and in sentencing. We're pretty harsh. But there's a cost, too, when we do something like this to the integrity of our society. What kind of a message are we sending? There'd be more bed space in our prisons, I guess, if we did this, but we'd have more bed space if people didn't break laws, wouldn't they? If they weren't doing meth and cocaine and heroin. I'm afraid that when we proceed down this kind of road, it opens doors to more acceptance. I was in the committee this year when we had testimony about legalizing marijuana, and it was a state rep who had a severe disability that was talking about the benefits of marijuana and how it helps him with his medical condition. It was very heart-wrenching testimony. It had an effect on a lot of the committee members. But we also have to keep our mind focused on beyond the emotional aspects of these discussions and what the ultimate results may be when we do something like this. And I am concerned that if we start this process of legalizing just small amounts of marijuana, ultimately we'll have cases where people will be smoking their joint while they're driving a car. Now, we don't allow driving with an open alcohol container or texting. I got to ask, how would you monitor? How would you enforce somebody that if we were to declare that they can't drive and smoke? Would we stop every car that's got a driver with a cigarette in their mouth to see if it was a marijuana joint or not? There's a lot of things, and two, as like my wife said, we throw these things out. Or if it's for a medical purpose, are we going to allow somebody to light up in a restaurant because it's a medicinal purposes? So they should have an exemption. There's a lot of things that has to be considered before we proceed on something like this. And so I want everybody to fully think about it. When we read it in the paper, we're only maybe touching the tip of the iceberg here. There's a great deal more impact that legislation like this will have on society.
Thank you.
I appreciate your comments. I guess it's a little confusing because are you saying you want to decriminalize marijuana completely? Or?
Possession of small amounts.
Well, I guess I know that Senator Steele is probably going to have a bill this session that changes the penalties so that they are not as harsh as they've been for possession of small amounts. But it won't decriminalize it. It would just change the penalties, and it doesn't go as far as Senator Tallien's bill goes. And I think that's something we'll just have to look at and hear testimony. I've talked to physicians because when it comes to some states have legalized it for health issues, for health reasons. So I think the Indiana State Medical Association will probably weigh in on this, and I would actually look to them for advice because they deal with this issue as far as what is the best treatment for people. And I know Dr. Wooten said he considers marijuana. He has treated people who have been on drugs and is very involved and worked at Southwest for a long time. And he considers marijuana a gateway drug and thinks that there are other avenues that are better to treat people that have illnesses that might be utilized in other states rather than marijuana. So I think we're just going to have to see what the legislation says. I haven't read it, don't know what the bill says. I certainly wouldn't want to take a position until I've had an opportunity to read the bill and to hear public testimony from experts on the issue. But I do appreciate you bringing it to our attention.
Yeah, sure.
Is this on? Okay, sorry. Drug and alcohol addiction is a huge problem we face in our community, in our state, and in our nation, and that certainly has to be taken into consideration when you look at the cost also involved with housing people that have been convicted of distributing or possessing drugs and alcohol. It's just a huge problem. I think you have to look at the whole big picture. I have for years been very disturbed that we as a country and as a state spend little or nothing on rehabilitation. We just throw money at the problem. We don't look and work hard enough to fix the problem. So it's a big picture. A lot of things have to be taken in consideration. I'm not willing to or ready to make a decision at this point in time.
Do you want to weigh in? Yeah.
Yes, I should. I am also, I'm also not at the point to make a decision, but I remember when Senator Steele brought his bill, and I've heard some discussion. I also have heard some discussion from Senator Tallien's bill. And there are two things that I think are really important in the whole discussion, and that is what it says to our children in this day and age. And I have not read anything on that at this point. And the other is that, as Senator Becker called it, a gateway drug, I call it an entry level drug, and I understand that is still out there, and I think that's one of the main issues that we really need to discern is whether or not it is an entry level drug. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to our next question, and that relates to pseudoephedrine. And is that Bernice? There we go.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Carol. I am Bernice Termenstein, a registered nurse with a Bachelor of Science degree in nursing. I am keenly aware of the destruction that meth has in society. We ask, what are the solutions? We know of the ingredients and the equipment needed to make meth. The primary ingredient is Sudafed, which has as its active ingredient pseudoephedrine, pseudo meaning false, is the solution then to make Sudafed available only by prescription. The brand name Sudafed is manufactured by McNeil Pharmaceutical Company out of Fort Washington, Pennsylvania. The generic drug Pseudogest is made by the major pharmaceutical company out of Livonia, Michigan. I have contacted McNeil Pharmaceutical, had discussions with them that I had heard it may be made with a gel base that would not be compatible for manufacture of meth. At this point, I'm awaiting a call back from McNeil Pharmaceutical. We know that many of our cold medications say that we could have substitute for a Sudafed, but many of them contain an antihistamine combined with a decongestant. And in the antihistamine, it dries up the secretions in the sinuses, whereas and that doesn't help at all. This may be of interest. I read in my old pharmacology textbook that I used in nurses training in 1945. Ephedrine is obtained from a very common plant resembling a yew tree. The plant grows in southwestern part of the United States. We know that some of our medicines first were derived from plants, like aspirin from the bark of a tree, digitalis from a foxglove plant. And we know that marijuana is derived from a plant. My stand on this is that let's not rush to a decision. Let's have some research and take our time. And sometimes we have a problem and we say we got to be quick in finding an answer, but let's research it. Thank you.
Thank you. So a question about whether, and let me clarify that with you. Is this a question as to whether a prescription approach to pseudoephedrine-based medications is appropriate or not? Is that a fair way to sum it up? Okay, and since that's a neutral question, we'll just go with answers from the legislators. Do you want to weigh in?
Thanks, Bernice. I don't know if that's on. Yeah. You know, I've been to a lot of meetings this summer about the pseudoephedrine issue. And last year in our session, we passed a bill that established what they call the NPLEX program. It's a National Precursor Log Exchange Program. I think there's like 24 states that are on this system. And it allows law enforcement, and they use it here locally, to access sales at real-time sales purchases. And any state can access this, and that information is readily available within 1/2 second of trying to access it. So the system's only been around about a year so far, and it's working well. And I had flyers, handouts, and I hope you guys will take one of these here. It's pointed out here in Indiana, in the first 6 months of this year, that program has stopped over 74,000 sales of pseudoephedrine, and over 5,000 in Vanderburgh, Posey, and Gibson counties. I have told you guys before, and you're entitled to know where the legislators stand on this. I will not support forcing our citizens to pay higher costs for common cold medicine by making them go to doctors and get prescription medicine to then go to their pharmacy and get it. For what bad people do, I'm not willing to punish good people for the actions of bad people. And I've asked before in committees, what would a person do if you're vacationing, you're 200 miles from here, you're up in Fort Wayne, wake up on a Sunday morning at 6 o'clock, severe sinus infection. How do you get that prescription at that time of the morning? How would you do that? And I've been told in the discussions, too, another point that needs to be made is the penelophrine, the substitute that they talk about that works just as well as pseudoephedrine. I checked with Purdue. I had some Purdue people that had done some research on this give me the information. I wanted to know what the facts are. And the fact of the matter is, penelophrine, the products that you get to substitute for pseudoephedrine, does not do well. There's been 11 studies conducted. For those studies, penelophrine done only marginally better than placebos. In the other 7 studies, it done equally or worse than placebos on the relief effect of that cough medicine.
Thank you.
So, well, there's more. I'll be happy to talk to folks more after the meeting about this because it's a subject that is pretty important to people. So I do advise you to take one of these flyers too, please.
Thank you. Someone else want to weigh in? Sure.
Thank you. I supported bills. There were a couple last year, and I think they will be introduced again this year. One was on giving us more local control on the issue, and the other one was the statewide ban on just the over-the-counter pseudoephedrine. And I appreciate and understand the argument. First of all, congratulations that you got, I think you were one of the winners of the, I've forgotten, it's just the Neighborhood Association Award. Spark Plug Award. Yeah, that was great. The problem that we have is that's how people are making it now. Basically, they're making it in their homes, and we know that it's dangerous. We know the effects on children. Not only just right after, if the children are taken out of a home like that, the protocol that you have to use in the hospital to clean them is absolutely horrid. I'd be happy to show you, but it is just horrid. I think the effects on children are not only emotionally long-lasting, but they're doing studies in Terre Haute about longitudinal studies of children, and they're saying that children, as a result of meth, are not recuperating, let's say, as they should, as they are in other drugs. There is permanent damage. I think that we have a problem that we've got to attack with every force we can. It's expensive. It's hurting neighborhoods. It's hurting people. And so I would stand on the side of making the prescription drug, making pseudoephedrine a prescription drug.
I concur with most majority of what Representative Regan said. As I did last year, I will do again this year. I was a co-author on Ron Bacon's bill, Representative Ron Bacon's bill, to give what we call home rule, home decision for local communities to decide for themselves whether or not to make it a prescription. I do know Representative Kubaki from Fort Wayne area is going to introduce the statewide ban on pseudoephedrine, or not ban, sorry, prescription requirement. As she said, the devastation of what it's doing to children who grow up in homes where meth is being used is just indescribable. With the advent of YouTube today, just Google sometime and look at YouTube and see what happens to the children who grow up in homes where meth is being used. And advocating on behalf of the people that can't speak for themselves, in my opinion, if it takes making something a prescription, creating what is going to be ideally an inconvenience if you believe one drug works better than another. I believe that the children in families, you look around the communities, you're having explosions in homes. Realtors, if there's any realtors out there, I was going door to door, wound up with a realtor, having a conversation with him. He's an assessor. He wears a mask when he goes into homes to assess them because he doesn't know if they've had meth in them or not. So it's a real problem. It's a problem in our community, and it's something that, this is a way to address it. The other states that have gone to prescriptions have showed a significant decrease in the pseudoephedrine. And Indiana is actually teaming with Illinois to try to attack this problem. It's a real problem. It's a problem here, and a solution is in front of us, and hopefully we can be mindful in the way that we present the legislation, that it doesn't create that big of an inconvenience to folks who need it, but it addresses our issue for our future generations and for our communities so that we don't have homes next to homes and children and things like that are being affected by this horrible drug.
Thanks. Sure.
I'm kind of torn. I agree with Jim Toms, and I agree with Gail and Wendy. I don't agree with it being a county local decision, county by county, because all we're going to do is drive them from one county to the other. I think it has to be a statewide approach, whatever it is that we do, in order to be most effective. And quite honestly, it probably should be a regional approach with other states, because then all we're going to do is drive them to another state. So, I quite honestly don't know how I feel on the issue, but I think both sides have good points, and we'll just have to see. Thanks.
Okay, thank you all. Did you want to?
Yeah, I would just concur with Representative Crouch. I mean, I tend to think that we ought to require a prescription just because I have seen the devastation and recognize you can make meth. There was one case where they were making it at Walmart in one of the aisles in the store because those one pot makers are so easy to do. I did see on the news this week, and I think eventually this is the answer, that you find another ingredient. I don't know if it was the one that Senator Toms was speaking about, but I think that there is a company that has come out with an alternative. And I think Bernice has some information on that too. And I think, hopefully the pharmaceutical companies will, because there has to be other avenues we could take so that we don't have the devastation on families and children that we have. And I don't know if any of you have seen or know the cost of a house that has had meth in it, and that's a cost that taxpayers pay, that families pay. It's about $14,000 to remediate a house that has had meth in it. That is not that's a big burden on society, as well as the damage that it does to children. So I think we really need to do more research, but I also think in the short run, and I guess at one point I thought maybe we could do a countywide pilot, and we could do that and see what the experience is. But I think probably what would happen is you just move it to other counties, too.
Okay, thank you. Let's move from talking about drugs to talking about money. Income taxes. Anita Ozette has a question.
Good morning, and thank you for being here. It's wonderful to have the opportunity to hear your opinions on different things. On the income tax, I've noticed that our governor-elect has proposed that we receive a refund on our income tax by lowering the rate from what it is. It strikes me as a little odd because, as you pointed out, we are running short in so many areas of money, even though we have this surplus. I have to wonder, do we have the surplus because we've chosen not to spend enough money in certain areas? I think that it was pointed out that if you make a $50,000, that his refund would be $170 per family. That's a little over $3 a week. I do have to wonder whether that $3 a week is more effectively used solving some of the more major problems than if somebody can send an extra treat for lunch for their children who maybe don't need the extra treat anyway. So that's one issue, is how do we address, I would like to see that not happen. Secondly, if we have this surplus, either we're maybe not spending enough money where we should, or if he really wants to reduce the surplus, then consider lowering the state sales tax. A sales tax is, I think, much more punitive on somebody who makes less money than someone who makes more money, because everybody needs certain things like, yes, I know it's not on food, but it is on personal hygiene. You do want to have your clothes clean. You do want to brush your teeth. You do want to use toilet paper. All those things are charged the same whether I make $30,000, $40,000 or I make $70,000 or $80,000. So I think that seems to me to, if he's really concerned about this surplus and wants to reduce it, which I'm not sure is the best, it's good to have a rainy day, then maybe consider other ways. That's my question.
Thank you. Is there anybody who would like to weigh in favor of the refund?
My name's excuse me. My name's Mel Dogan, and I am in favor of people spending their own money and not the government. I think people decide how to spend their money best rather than the government doing it. Thank you.
Thanks. And so our question generally is, what is the rationale for the tax refund? Why do we have a surplus? And what are other ways that could be spent? So who wants to start us off? Everyone at once now.
I'll take a stab
Sure.
at it. I guess, and I'm really pleased to see Anita here. She's my neighbor. And we run into each other on the street sometime. We both walk, so in our neighborhood. But I guess I don't think that there's going to be a real surplus by the time we get through with necessary government expenditures such as education, which was cut $300 million. I think we need to shore up education. The universities, we have USI here. They are the lowest funded university in the state of Indiana. They do more with less than any other university, and their funds have been cut as well. The reason we have a surplus is because we have managed very well, but we've also taken a lot of money at a time when revenues were low that was necessary. And I do think that at a time when we have a little extra money, we also need to shore up those places where we cut. We cut funding for the developmentally disabled. Mental health has been cut. those are very important services that people need that many taxpayers cannot afford on their own. We don't even have enough child psychiatrists. We don't have adequate mental health treatment programs right here in our community. So I would say, and we have to fund I-69. The last leg has to be funded. I'm all for that highway. It will save us a lot of time. Many people thought it would only save 20 minutes. Believe you me, it's going to save at least 45 minutes once it's all done. And I think it's imperative that we have the funding to do that. So I think when you look at all the things, early childhood education, I'm going to have a bill on that. I think it's critical. We're one of, I think Suzanne said 11, I thought it was only 8 that does not, but either way, it's still, we're way in the minority. We have early childhood education right here in our community, but it is not funded by the state, and we need to do a better job of preparing young people. So I think it's too soon to say whether or not we actually should give it back in an income tax cut until we actually see what the revenue forecast is going to be. We'll have one in December. We'll also have the final one in April before the end of this session, because it's a budget year, so it's going to be critical for us to look at all of that. But I do think before we start giving back a little bit of money that really isn't going to amount to a whole lot, that we need to consider some of these priorities and things that we have cut over the past 5 years.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would say first about I-69 that it has been enjoyable. I've been traveling it several times this last week and a half, and it is safer. I would add that. It is a much safer route and doesn't tear up my car as badly as the trucks do on the other one. So I am extremely happy, and yes, we have got to finish it. And when you think about those priorities, and you think of another priority, which we all have been very concerned about, and that is returning this decision-making to the local, or many of us are, to local staff, because it's a better way to solve or address the problem. Returning decision-making to the local DCS is going to cost money. As a matter of fact, it's going to cost a little under $9 million because they have to hire more folks. There were so many folks that were hired for different purposes, and they need to get them in the field. That's one of the issues that we have. And I do want you to know I put a piece of paper out there that explains some of the funding for the hotline, the return of the hotline to the local level. So we really need to consider those needs, and I'm at this point where I don't want to say that we need to return that money, or we need a tax saving in the way of cutting the sales tax, because we really need to look at that budget or that revenue projection, and also what's important to our state in education and protecting our children.
Okay. You, sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm going to use my 2 minutes. One of the things I've always felt that government ought to be more concerned about too is on the tax issue is how we are stewards of the money that the state brings in. And just on a side note, I want to share with you that there was a story that came out of Indianapolis this summer from Channel 13 about illegal aliens and even people in prison who have been filing fraudulent tax returns, and they have been soaking this state, and it happens across the nation. But they apply for what they call an I-10 number. It's similar to a Social Security number, but it's these things are given out more freely. And there have been people here that have filed on this additional child credit on their taxes for kids who have never lived in this country or never even visited this country. And there was a story out of southern Indiana here where there was one illegal alien was willing to talk before the cameras but not show his face, were admitted that in his trailer there was filings sent from that address for claiming 20 kids, and the IRS sent $29,000 to that one address. And so I introduced a bill that would clamp down on this sort of process. I've even talked to, I've heard from DLC and even local sheriffs where prisoners in jail inmates have been using this system to scam. So, and even at the federal level, the IRS has admitted that they were told, just don't worry about it, just send the money back and keep the process flowing, because if you investigate it, it slows things down. So my bill here, if it becomes law, would require a Social Security number to be applied unless on certain exemptions where they can use an I-10 number. But the purpose is that we control how we release our money back, and that people here that pay hard-earned tax dollars, that precious money is not lost by somebody who can slide into town, game the system, sack up money, and leave. And that's what's been going on for quite some time. So I'm hoping this legislation will get a hearing, and I hope that it'll be a first step in controlling what happens to our money that comes into our state. It's your money. And I know there's a fiscal impact that may save our state somewhere between $3.8 and $4 million. It's not a huge sum of money, but it's a start. So I just want to let you know that it does have a bearing on this tax issue that you speak about. So,
thank you. Let's go to a related question, and this is, if I'm understanding the question right, is asking what happened to finding out how the tax money that led to the surplus was sort of lost in the system. Is that right? This is Carolyn Brown who asked this question.
I'm Carolyn Brown, and at the end of last legislation, there was going to be an investigation as to how this money all of a sudden showed up, and no one seemed to know it was there. And now it seems to be brushed under the table. No one has heard results from why it was left for almost 2 years without you legislators even knowing about it, which made you look bad because you were pushing for tax cutting back on stuff, but yet there was this money sitting there. I want to know, what have you found out about how this money was inconveniently lost for almost 2 years?
Okay, who wants to pick that up? Sure, Senator Thomas.
because, Carolyn, that's a good question. I don't have an answer for that one, because I haven't heard a word about it. Like you say, it's disappeared, it's vaporized, and I'm wondering too. I know that I think I'd heard that there was some people that was terminated as a result of that, but to be honest with you, I can't answer it. I just don't know, and I'm as curious about it as you are.
Looking for an art. Go on.
She's Googling. I know $80 million was diverted to early childhood education. From my understanding, it was a software glitch, and this is the first part. I don't know about the second part. But the first part was a software glitch, and when corporations filed their income or filed their taxes online, it went into this, and don't ask me, I'm not a computer person, okay? Went into this particular place of the software but wasn't being drawn in. And so because this wasn't being drawn in, it wasn't being recognized as being income coming into the state. So that's how it got lost in some sort of software glitch. Beyond that, they found more in an audit, and I don't know where that's at, to be honest with you. So the initial findings, they did send money to early childhood education. The subsequent glitches, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was looking for an email here. I think we need to be conscious of those kinds of issues on every level, and there was one that came within the Department of Child Services when we were looking at that budget, and that was that due to slow pay, the department was paying a lot in interest. In other words, not paying their bills on time. And it was, at one point, I should tell you, it's more than 100,000 at one point. And I think maybe I've given these figures out. I was looking for the figures, and I can get them to you. But it doesn't sound like a lot, but we need to monitor that. And they are putting some procedures in place so that that doesn't happen again, because it's totally unnecessary, and it causes also on the other end a lot of stress, so the people that are supposed to be being paid. I would say also on this issue about the computer glitch, I mentioned this to somebody who was very involved in our own local finances here years ago, and said, you know what, I don't quite understand that. And this person said to me, well, whenever you institute a new system, you always run the old system parallel so that you can make sure there aren't any problems. And it was the same issue with IBM when IBM came in.
Cutting education and healthcare services. So I think we need to find out for sure and make sure. I think what I heard early on was that it was a software glitch, but that's a lot of money for a software glitch. I can see some of it being a problem, but I guess I tend to think it was hidden. And so I don't know. Maybe it was for a rainy day that we didn't have yet or something. I'm just not as trusting as to the motives for it as maybe some folks are.
Okay, thank you. Let's have a question now on physical therapy issues from Mary Bennett.
Good morning. I'm talking once again about physical therapy. Speaking a little bit on behalf of myself as chair of the Physical Therapy Licensing Committee and also from the Professional Association. Once again, we're going to ask for direct access. The Professional Association is, and I know in the past we've had support from the local legislators. It is a question of being able to come without having a physician's referral to physical therapy. And I spoke earlier to Senator Becker and Representative Crouch and pointed out one of the areas where it's very important is in the school system. Because I think I misspoke some years ago saying that we were the only rehab professionals who needed a physician's referral, but actually that's not quite true. Occupational therapists do in many situations, but they do have the ability in the school system to be able to treat the children without a physician's referral. And we find that when children come in the middle of a school year, or even at the beginning of the school year, particularly those from a lower socioeconomic background, often they are maybe severely disabled, and their parents don't go to the physician and get a doctor's referral. So it would be really beneficial to our children, our disabled children, in the school system particularly, that they could get this, because it is actually required by federal law that they receive physical therapy. And then some of them do go the whole year without getting physical therapy because we can't get a physician's referral for it. So that's one issue. The other issue is, as chair of the licensing committee for the state, we're a subcommittee of the medical licensing board, and I had to do a presentation to a committee called ROAC, which is the Regulated Occupations Evaluation Committee, which is a committee that was put in place by the legislature a few years ago, and they're looking at every regulated occupation in turn. And as a result of that, they are going to, I understand, request that legislation come into being for us to get our own physical therapy board. Now, this will not increase any cost. The staff will be the same. It will streamline the process a little bit. We will not have to go through the medical licensing board for rule changes. At the moment, we act independently as an independent board, except for rule changes. And it will take a little step out of that. There will be no additional cost, and it will streamline the process. So I'm just asking for your support, and I do have some literature for people.
So access to physical therapy without physician referrals and the creation of a physical therapy board. Did anyone want to weigh in? Yeah, sure.
Point of clarification, is that on? No, I hadn't. It's on? Okay. With children in school, now, you do or do not have to have a physician.
Use the mic, please.
In children in school, you have to have a prescription for physical therapy, but not for occupational therapy or speech therapy. They can get both of those services without a physician's referral. But in Indiana, we require a physician's referral. We are now the only state in the nation. We have got down to, and including the District of Columbia. So we're now the 51st the 51st jurisdiction, and we're the only one without any type of direct access to physical therapy.
Mary, do you know the rationale why they can get occupational and speech and not physical?
I think for the the speech therapists have had it for years and years and years as a licensed profession. They have their own board, and it was written in, originally it was never written in that they needed a physician's referral. The occupational therapists became a licensed profession not that long ago, and at that time, again, it was an exemption was made. They do need a physician's referral in a hospital situation, but in the school system that was left as a, it's stated in their statute that they don't need a physician's referral in an educational setting.
Well, I will be looking forward to seeing some legislation. Is that it? We're going to see some legislation
You are going
this
to
year?
see some legislation. From the Professional Association will introduce the direct access. Whoever the ROAC committee choose will introduce the board. I think they last year had a little problem. They introduced legislation to remove boards for the hairdressers and a very few other people. But this year, I think they're probably going to be more cautious this year. But apparently the physical therapy, from what I understand at their last meeting, they were saying that they were going to have legislation introduced for our own board.
Who opposes this?
The people who oppose the chiropractors and the physicians, probably. The chiropractors have always taken the upfront. I think because they see independent physical therapists in private practice being in opposition to chiropractors. But, I think the studies have shown in other states that it really hasn't affected chiropractors' practice very much. I'm sure in a hospital situation, when people aren't going to walk around hospital physical therapists and pick up patients. They're going to get a referral. The hospital is going to require that as part of their bylaws. So it is more on an outpatient setting so that people could come to me. So if you sprain your ankle, you can ask me what you should do about it, and I can tell you legally instead of which massage therapists don't have to, and massage therapists are teaching exercise. It's written into their statute as well as doing massage. So you could go to a massage therapist with your sprained ankle and they'll tell you what to do. They have about 6 months of education. Physical therapists have a doctoral degree now at all 3 programs in Indiana. So it seems kind of ridiculous that we can't do this. But the physicians and the chiropractors are the opposition. You
didn't know you'd be up here all day.
That's all right.
Kind of piggybacking off of what Senator Toms asked, I guess my question is, why are we the 50th state? Why, if it's just the chiropractors and doctors, why? What's the hang-up in Indiana?
I'm not sure. Senator Becker will remember when she was chair of the House Committee, which was back when Jeff Hayes was the state representative. We were working on it then. It's been worked on for 100 years. I'm not sure why.
If I could just... We've passed it in the House before. Yes. The Senate then would kill it. When I chaired the Health Committee in the House, we passed it. The Senate killed it because the Senator Miller was always opposed to it. She chairs the Health Committee in the Senate. I think that opposition is less than it used to be. Basically, it's a turf battle.
That's what it is.
That's all it is between chiropractors and Indiana State Medical and the physical therapist. And if you look at the amount of money contributed to campaigns by the Indiana State Medical Association and the Indiana Chiropractors Association versus the physical therapist,
who have very little money,
and work for a lot less money, that's why we are the 50th state that has not done it. I think there are some differences, and I think you have to be careful when you say independence, because there are some statutes in other states that it's not complete independent practice under certain circumstances, and so you just have to look at all of that, and I'm sure that we will this session. But hopefully, I mean, we've cussed and discussed and debated this for at least 15, 20 years.
I think one of the things, I think probably half the states who have some type of direct access have restrictions. It's for 30 days, and then you have to get a doctor's referral, those sorts of things. And that's the sort of legislation. We're not going to ask for complete direct access. It will be some sort of limited direct access that we would ask for.
And I would certainly support that.
Yeah.
Well, Mary, you know that I support you guys.
I know you
and
do.
I've met with your group. And I asked that question just for that purpose. It is a turf battle. I had the podiatrists want just from the knees down. They don't care about anybody. Just the knees down, that part of the body.
Yes,
and the chiropractors is you can have any part of the body, just leave the spine alone. So that leaves you guys what? The arms and the head. For the same reason I support this is why I don't support making people go to the doctors get this prescription for cough medicine. Why would we make people spend that extra money and force them to go somewhere else, go to point A to get to point B? I don't support that. So I'm with you guys on this here. And on a side note, I don't know who it was that brought up that legislation about the hairdressers, but I guarantee you they learned their lesson up there on that one. Their right to work was tough. That was incredible. But
I will say that Physical Therapy Day at the State House is going to be January the 30th. Look out, we did one a couple of years ago, and January the 30th we're going to have another Physical Therapy Day at the State House. We hope, last time we had about 500 people there, I think, and we're hoping to have the same number again this time. It didn't help us 2 years ago, but we live in hopes. Thank you.
Does one have to get a doctor's referral to attend Physical Therapy Day, though?
When I spoke to Representative Crouch earlier, she said, well, I can bring all my aches and pains. I said, no, you can't unless you have a doctor's referral.
Right. All right, thank you. A question now about hydraulic fracturing or fracking from Jim Daniels.
Good morning. I've got some big concerns about hydraulic fracturing or fracking that has happened in a number of states, but let's first take about a half minute to explain what it is. It's a way to extract gas from the earth, and it uses what I would call a witch's brew of toxic chemicals to do that, but it has been compared with classic drilling, vertical drilling for oil, which has been going on for quite some time and isn't really safe, but it's relatively safe. Hydraulic fracking involves drilling horizontally. It involves pressure of a number of these chemicals to go into shale, and with that pressure, release the gas by fracturing the shale, and then using that pressure to draw that gas back up to the surface. Several states have allowed this practice to occur, and in several of them, maybe even all of them that I'm aware of, have had some concerns and some problems. In East Texas, there's been an area where a number of fracking cases have occurred in a relatively short period of time, and they've had about 600 or 700 earthquakes after that practice started, and this was not an earthquake zone before, but it kind of is afterwards. So while you say, well, we can't put a fingerprint that the fracking caused those earthquakes, if you don't have earthquakes for a whole bunch of years and then you start something, and as soon as you kind of start it, very quickly after that, you do have earthquakes, it kind of makes you think that might be part of it. In Pennsylvania and New York, they have allowed this to occur. And what has happened there is big-time contamination of groundwater. And in people that live in rural settings that use groundwater, which in the entire country is a majority of people in the country use groundwater as their primary drinking water source. So if you live outside of a city, there's a very good chance you're using groundwater for a drinking water source. In fact, a lot of Warwick County and Newburgh, that area, they use groundwater as their drinking water source.
I'm going to need you to ask a question here.
The question is, please oppose fracking in the state of Indiana.
Please oppose fracking in the state of Indiana. Going up at the end for
period.
So your question is a statement. Okay. Is there anybody who would like to weigh in favor of fracking? Okay, we'll leave it with the
Does anyone know
opposed
what
view.
fracking?
Well, that was a
You guys
good.
know
Jim
what-
gave a good explanation. That was a good explanation of how it works.
Well, but there's another side to the issue.
The contamination side. I'd be glad to go into the contamination side of what has been causing problems in other states.
Let's see where the legislators stand on the issue.
Want me to take? Okay. Well, I'll start off here. You told me when we come in, all I got to do is do what you say, and so that made it pretty easy.
It is. I'm really cutting you know, a lot of leeway.
Well,
Makes
Jim,
life easier.
I know that concern is legitimate, and in utilities we've had discussions about fracking, and I do know that with every type of exploration, when we're retrieving oil, coal, and natural gas, there's always the potentials of something going wrong, and groundwater is very important to us. It's the same as heat in our homes, and so I'm hoping that with all of these, with this new industry, that there will be a close oversight on the people that's doing this process and how it's being done. That doesn't guarantee it, but I'm just hoping that as we proceed on with this here, the fact of the matter is fracking is when they can go in and horizontal drill into pockets of oil and gas that were inaccessible before, that has brought our country more dependent on itself rather than foreign energies. It has, and that's one of the reasons why you've seen the price of natural gas plummet, because right now natural gas is almost, I won't say limitless because it is a limited resource, but the access now has allowed utility companies to retrieve this natural gas in places that 10, 15 years ago there was no chance. And like drilling for oil even, the sweet oil wells are gone. The oil to get today is much harder and much more difficult, much more expensive to tap. And so this procedure has allowed the drilling companies to access this energy that we depend on. There's not a soul in here that doesn't like their lights to come on when they throw that switch and that refrigerator keeping their drinks cold. So with all of that, there's we have to realize that before we get too hostile on trying to stop some of this.
Hostile?
That we want to make sure, I'm not talking about you, but we just want to make sure that we're careful that we don't start hindering the energy industry from accessing the things that makes our life a lot more pleasant. I do understand what you're talking about, and I do understand about there's even discussion about property rights on drilling underneath people's property and stuff, but I just want to share that with you, that with a lot of issues we deal with and topics, and that's one of the things that I'm not willing to rush in and make decisions right away without looking beyond our headlights, but I appreciate you bringing it up. I just want to share with folks some of the reasons why
Thank you.
Your natural gas prices have fell because of this.
Jim, do we currently have fracking in Indiana?
Not that I'm aware of, no. That's why I've been
Okay.
under the standing that there will be some legislation to start to allow it in Indiana. It's not allowed in every single state, but it is allowed in some.
So that some states are already doing it.
Yes.
Okay. I guess I'm on. Okay. I think we have to be very careful, but I think what Jim has indicated is also very true. Now I'm not. Okay. Now I am. Okay. We need. That has brought the cost of gas down to, what is it, $2 versus what it was 4 or 5 years ago at $9. I mean, that's a big savings. That's a huge savings. So I think but if we're going to do it, we need to do it safely. And so I think it has to be examined. But you also have less dependence on foreign oil, which is something that we all want as well. So it's not an easy answer, and it's certainly I would have to. Jim serves, I think, on the Utilities Committee, so he's heard a lot more about it than I have. So I deal on health and commerce and transportation. So we'll be looking at it further, but I think you also have to take into consideration the cost of energy.
Okay. Are you sure it's a cost reduction or just a cost shifting?
No, it's definitely a reduction.
If your well is destroyed and your tap water is flammable, that's a cost.
I understand
that has to be
Jim,
the
but-
full cost of all this has to be included.
That's right.
That is true, Jim. And if you're cold in the wintertime because you don't have no heat, that's a cost too.
Yeah.
Ready?
Yeah.
I think I'm on. Fracking is a serious concern, and I think Montana, wasn't that the one? Was it Montana that first? It was one of the West country, one of the West.
I'm not sure who was first.
States that really noticed the problems, and we did have a bill that came before the legislature this last session, and I asked on the floor if it was a bill to establish standards, because that's what we need to do, is that we need to establish standards, and it was not. It's simply to collect data. And I think we as legislators must take a more assertive role regarding fracturing, because it really does have some negative consequences that are serious. And I look at, it's the aquifer here, aquifer, is that what aquifer that goes along the Ohio River? I understand that goes all the way, in some portions, supplies northern Indiana. So I think it's an issue that's not just us. It's an issue that our legislature needs to take note of for the state itself. So, yeah, it's a serious concern. And we need to support more regulation, or at least some standards set.
Is that working? How's that? Okay. It's one of those issues. When I have an issue that's complex and there's a lot of research or opinions on both sides, I like to seek out the people that are in those particular fields and get their opinions on it. And I've spoken to folks that are opposed to it and folks that are in favor of it, and the costs and the benefits. And to me, it's kind of like the chicken and the egg in the global warming debate on what benefits and costs would come from it. But if we can look at the aspects of what it can do to lower the costs for energy in our community and do it safely with standards, I like that idea. That's definitely something that I can be open to and looking through. But again, it's one of those issues that we're confronted with, in which sometimes there's information overload, and you try to discern as best you can on what will truly benefit the community and what is best for our environment and those sort of things. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Question now from Marcia Abel.
I'll see you in a little bit.
And this is about IDOT?
Sort of.
Okay, sort
About
of.
transportation.
Transportation issues.
Thank you for allowing me to be here this morning. Actually, I'm going to have to cut out. I've got to ring bells at 11 o'clock on the east side. This is a joint petition that the Vanderbilt County Commissioners presented to NDOT. We jointly with the Airport Authority, we have a major problem on the northeast side of town. The highway or the roadway that's being built, Kansas Road, for the expansion of the airport. This is not a county project, so consequently, we in the county have virtually no power to force this thing through. But Southern Indiana Railroad has held up this project by not agreeing to work with us on this, or work with the developer on it. In fact, one of the things they're requiring is that the county enter into an agreement with them that we will maintain the power lines once the railroad track is moved. Well, we don't own the power lines, so we can't maintain the power lines. We've tried to explain that to them. The Southern Railroad is holding this project up. Kansas Road was to be closed for 60 days to put a roundabout in. It has now been told to all the merchants out there that road will not be open until April or May. Mr. Jeff Dyke was in front of the county commissioners Tuesday night and told us that he owns a farm market. If he's not open until April or May, he will be out of business. The Elite Fitness has lost 30% of their business. Do not expect that they're going to be able to maintain that until Kansas Road is open. Everyone out there is very, very concerned. So I'm speaking on behalf of everybody in Vanderbilt County that drives that way and has to go through there. We need some pressure. We're asking NDOT to put some pressure on Indiana Southern, I think it's called Indiana Southern Railroad, to allow us at the airport's cost to continue with this project. They're paying for all the railroad moving. This is not costing the railroad anything. They're just holding up a project that really needs to go forward. And if it doesn't, this is an economic problem for the people that have businesses on the Kansas Road area. would like to have you, if you know anybody, you can jab a little bit for us.
Thank you.
Yes, Wendy.
So is the Indiana Southern Railroad an entity of Indiana Department of Transportation?
No, they are not. Okay. They are not an entity of anybody. They are the most independent group of people that you'll ever work with.
Okay.
Do you know where their home office is? No.
I do not, but I think you could probably find out maybe from this petitioner. Mr. Joe Harrison has been talking to them at some length, and they just don't seem to want to help us at all.
So how can NDOT, if they're independent, how can NDOT put pressure on them to do?
Because they're going to want favors from NDOT in the future. I mean,
right.
It's all about money and power, and NDOT's got the power.
All right. And it's not a federal, the railroad's not a federal road?
Well, the railroad is considered, they're protected under some federal law, but this is actually a federal project, the railroad is. I mean, the airport expansion is. This is not a county project. In fact, we have no way to put pressure on anyone, but NDOT can, because these railroads down the road are going to have to deal with NDOT.
Okay.
And so, you just make your trades. We're asking for a trade. We want to hurry it up.
Maybe, Marcia, if you would, it'd be quicker if you could maybe possibly, just as a suggestion, draft a letter for us to all send to NDOT.
We can do that.
And then that way we can all, as a unified delegation, sign off in favor. I mean, I think we all would be. I live out there. I know it's a problem, and it certainly is a problem for Jeff Dyke, and he's got a new market out there, and we ought to be supporting. That's the way we can support small business, and so certainly I'd be willing to sign it, and I think most of us would.
Okay.
I got a question, Marcia. Have you talked to the federal, like Larry Bichon's office or anybody like that?
I think Mr. Harrison has. Joe Harrison, the county attorney, has been really trying to push this without it getting out of control. But by last Tuesday night's commissioner meeting, we heard that they're down to the point the asphalt plant is going to close down. So when the asphalt plant closes down, they will not be able to do anything out there until next spring, which is going to be devastating.
Okay, you say the holdup is the utility lines being moved?
No, the holdup is
they want you to take
is a railroad company. Well, that's one of the many requirements that they have. They want a lot of things, and it's not anything that's money wise. It's stuff we don't have control over. We've tried to explain to them it's not that we mind spending any money because it's not county money. I mean, it's the airport's money, but we don't control these things. It would be like me asking them to go do something on your property. I don't have the control over veterans.
So they're asking you to control the lines.
They ask us to maintain the power lines over the railroad.
Who has the authority to maintain the power lines?
Well, it's Veterans line.
Have they talked to Veteran?
No, they're just talking to us. They don't really. I don't think they care. If you want to know the truth, I don't think they care.
Are they just trying to delay the project?
This project's not important to them.
Okay.
Well, Marcia, if you send that letter, can you send the contact that you're dealing with that's Indiana Southern Railway? Is that railway or railroad?
I will. It's, I don't know, I was calling it CSX the other night and found they corrected me. It's not CSX. Okay. But I'll get all that information to all of you. I'll have Joe Harrison put together a packet for you and a cover and a letter that you can sign.
Yeah, just have him put together a letter and the contact information, and then we can send it if everybody's in agreement, I think.
Absolutely,
yeah.
sure.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on. Question now from Carol Davis regarding the Department of Child Services.
Hi, thanks for coming. As a longtime child advocate, I've been encouraged and discouraged this year about the interim DCS study committee. And I've spoken up in the House September 5th, and I would suggest everyone at least get on the archives and look at the September 5th meeting they had, because a lot of public testimony was on there. And I have been discouraged and encouraged by the study committee. Especially want to thank Gail Rican for being on the committee, because I wore out her minutes on the cell phone, I know. But she has really helped me a lot and put in a lot of good words for the children in DCS. And I have been upset about the hotline for one of the things, but now they want to hire more people for the social workers and supervisors. We have a 20%. We've had a 20% turnover rate from the entry-level social workers. So now, if we're going to have a 20% turnover, we're going to be top-heavy again. To me, and the supervisors with these 26 supervisors, and 20% of the 80% is going to be a turnover. I just feel like the legislators need to really have LSA do some studies on DCS. We need an external audit, definitely need an external audit. We need oversight of DCS, which I know is one of the things the Democrat caucus is introducing. I just think that DCS has just been kind of a low-level priority in all the years I've been doing this, and LSA has not been utilized enough from the legislators to really do some research. And Senator Toms has been a big help since the Republicans have the majority. I think we have a really big chance to overhaul DCS. It's the core people in DCS where a lot of the problem is, and we're not getting at this. And throwing more social workers, we hired 800 before, and still we got 20% turnover. We have all of this administration cost, and we're not getting anywhere really. People down here are really not aware of what is going on in DCS. I know that because the media does not cover it.
Carol,
and thank you all for coming.
A quick clarification, just so that everyone knows, LSA stands for
Legislative Services Administration, or agency.
Reactions? Yeah.
Thank you, Carol, and all of us. I'm sure appreciate the fact that you've taken this interest. It's become a passion of yours for years, and it takes people like that to continually bring issues up, so that we continue to address them. Regarding the external audit, the specifics of the particular oversight committee have not been drawn out, and as I said, we made a first step. It is something I also agree that is needed. Another look at the entire agency, not only the personnel but the money involved, and so I will be requesting that we continue to look at that and put that in the budget even this year, that we do have an external audit. The one thing that I think about the hotline and these folks is that LSA will be charged to look at that. They will be charged to, when the bill comes out for the hotline, they will be in charge to determine an impact study. And we will have their evaluation of that plan and the personnel that is needed. So we'll have a real clear look at that long before there's any decision on it.
Okay. Thank you.
Senator Toms.
Carol, thanks again. I know you worked very, very hard on this, and you know, I've had a lot of discussions over the summer. I don't know if this thing's on or not, but can you hear that okay? But anyway, Carol's right about it's not reported around here, and I don't think a lot of our citizens understand to the degree of what we're dealing with these little ones in these homes that are being abused or wind up dead. But I did put together a meeting right after this session was over back in May, where we had some of the legislators and folks from DCS came down at my request, and we talked about this. Some of the things that came out of that meeting was from my own personal observation to see if everybody was working together or not. And one of the things that was a little troubling to me is finding out that we have this child protection team that I don't think folks know that we even have something like that, and I don't believe it's being fully utilized. And so there are some discrepancies and shortcomings here.
It's Indiana law.
Yeah, and so and then also just for a point of knowledge on, I here a few weeks ago, I had invited myself to tour the DCS agency, and I would ask if any other senators want to join me, but a lot of them were busy, so it was just a one-man tour. I did get to go through the agency, and I was hoping to meet with the interim director, John Ryan, and as it turned out, I did. I did get to sit down with him, and we spent about 45 minutes to an hour talking. I asked some straightforward questions, and I think he answered straightforward back to me. And I also got to tour through the cubicle areas where all the workers were at, and it was. And I was doing a little recon too. I was introducing myself to some of the people. Some of them I was being introduced to, but I was looking in each cubicle to see their screens to see if they were actually working on something or if they were ordering tickets to Disney World. I was just wanting to see what, because this issue, I'm not really sure. That a 20% turnover rate is just unacceptable. I've worked a lot of jobs. I've never worked a place that had 20% turnover rate. That's very disturbing because to me, they're in perpetual training mode. You can't. And I've sit in on a case where a family asked me to be there when the caseworker came to their house. I watched the process take place. I sit in on that. And in that tour of mine, I went to one cubicle where there was a lady who had 4 boxes, huge boxes. And I asked what was in those files, and she said those were death cases. And that was just that 4 boxes. They had more than just that. So we're talking about a phenomenal situation here. It's very important that I hope that we will continue after this summer study, that we will continue to follow up. This does not die away or get forgot about like the money you were talking about, Mrs. Brown. I hope that there will be a steady interest in correcting the shortcomings that this agency.
Did you share that she said there was also more cubicles that are working on that with that many boxes?
So,
people, I mean, that's just deaths here in Indiana. I mean, does that not make anybody just wonder what is going on?
So I want you to know that there are legislators up there that are sincere about following up on this, and it takes this matter as serious as it is. And I want to thank Carol for all of her work. And she's been very helpful to me on the information she's given.
Anyone else want to weigh in? Senator Becker?
I appreciate Carol. She's been at this for a lot of years. You see the gray hair on the sides of her head. And I appreciate it. And Jim and I both asked to be on this interim study committee, but we were not appointed there. So it was not something that we've had any direct input into, but we will have in this upcoming session with the bills. And I've talked to John Ryan. I think he's a very sincere individual, and he's very knowledgeable about state government and about what's happening with DCS, but we need to continue to monitor them so that we can solve some of these problems. The hotline was something that we knew down here wasn't working, wasn't going to work when they did it. I opposed it when they came out with it because I had already talked to law enforcement. Who better than local people to know what's happening in our community, rather than to send it up to Indianapolis and then have them try to decide who to send it to. And it's been a mess. And so I think that there are a lot of good recommendations. I've talked to Senator Holdman, who also was a co-chair, and I think there will be some positive legislation come out this time. And so we need to stay on it.
Okay, if we go quickly, we can get in one more question here, and that's from Paul Johnson about taxation for federal retirees. And if we can do more like a minute per person, we'll stay on time.
Yes, I'm Paul Johnson. I think I know everybody here on the board. Appreciate you coming this morning and hearing us. This is an old problem, as you all know, that we've had. We feel like that we are taken advantage of, that we are not taxed fairly in comparison with Social Security, and this has been a long time problem. I know a lot of our retirees leave Indiana, like Wendy was talking about, because of taxing, and it's been a long-standing taxing problem. You know, and I think everybody has our point paper here, so I'll not belabor that to give you a chance to talk to it.
Sure.
Thank you, Paul. And I know you've been working on this a long time, and I support your efforts on this. It is not equitable that they tax your pensions, your federal pensions, and we don't tax Social Security like that. And it is true that people do leave the state of Indiana, and they take their purchasing power with them. I think the trade-off is to our deficit when those folks leave our state. So Is there something going on in the House this session that's going to...
Yes, there is. Representative Ed Clare is going to be introducing a bill this time, and we've introduced bills in the past for the last 15 years that I know about, and usually got stopped at the Ways and Means Committee, didn't get to the floor. And we've got a bigger push this time to try to make this fair for us. When you were talking about people leaving, when an older retired person leaves Indiana, that's worth about 3.5 working people here in Indiana.
Right.
So it is a big impact financially.
Right. And, yeah, I know that, like I said, the purchasing power of those people is something that we get. And the tax, if we were successful, would not have that major of an impact on our tax base, but the buying power and other taxes that resident would provide for the state override what they would lose.
That's correct.
So, okay, thank you.
Other yeah.
How many? Is it working now? Okay. How many, on an estimate, retirees do you think there are in Indiana that would be impacted by this?
Well, I represent over 36,000 federal retirees here in Indiana, and also over 24,000 working federal employees, and so they're going to be retiring as well in time.
Okay. Have they done what's called the fiscal impact? Have you seen from LSA what the fiscal impact would be to Indiana and loss of revenue on?
I know that's being worked, and I don't have those figures. I know that, for instance, here, Social Security, there's 756,000+ Social Security recipients that do not pay tax. Okay. But federal retirees, other than if you qualify for a $2,000 exemption, we pay tax like everybody else does.
From experience with my veterans pension, it's going to be, you're always fighting that fiscal impact statement, looking at the number of dollars that is brought in by those tax dollars versus the number going out. But I like the perspective of what not doing that benefits us, and dollars saved, dollars spent, dollars earned in Indiana. So that gives, for me, in the veterans piece, a different perspective, and maybe we could do the same thing with this particular information.
Yeah,
we
were just asking for your support and taking this seriously. Like I say, I personally have been involved with this the last 15 years, so it's going to, I really think their attitude is, if we hang on long enough, they're all going to die off.
And we'll have to leave it there. You can, of course, continue the conversation after we conclude here, but we are out of time. I want to thank you all for coming out today and for asking such important questions. We reconvene again on the second Saturday of each month through April. That puts us back here at 9:15 in the morning on Saturday, January 12th. And I wish you all a happy holidays.